As you probably know, our illustrious dictator, Donald Trump, is in India today, where he is hanging out with another murderous dictator, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the Hindu nationalist that is in control of India. Over the past 10 years, I've come into contact with a lot of Indian people who are in this country for study, or they've taken up positions at Emory University or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, mostly physicians, scientists, researchers. In other words, the creme de la creme of Indian intellectual society. These are very smart people, very well educated, and they come to the United States to continue the kind of work that they were trained to do in India, but may not have the sort of facilities that they want in India, or B, that would be A. B, are offered such exorbitant salaries that they can't afford not to come. The reason I mention that is because when I meet people from different countries, if we go buy a rug someplace and the rug salesman happens to appear, all right, to be foreign because of the swarthiness of his skin or the accent in his English, I will ask him, are you from Persia? Are you from Turkey? Are you from, where are you from? And then we'll talk. I love to do that. Drives Kathy crazy, but I'll get involved in a political discussion with these people from different countries, specifically because I want to know. I just want to know what their take is on their own culture, society, government, leadership, yada, yada. Well, I've done the same with the Indian people that I've met over the past decade and a half or longer here in Atlanta. And I always ask about Modi, about Narendra Modi, because he is a murderous son of a bitch. He, if not organizes, certainly turns a blind eye to religious slaughter in his vast country, if that slaughter is perpetrated by Hindus against Muslims. If that slaughter is perpetrated by Muslims against Hindus, Modi goes out of his fucking mind. He really does. He just, that Trumpian aspect that you find in so many of these bloated dictator-type world leaders comes out in force. So I believe it was on Friday in the New York Times, a piece by Pankaj Mishra, who is a Indian writer, an author, whose latest book, hold on, I've got it right here. His latest book is one entitled Age of Anger, A History of the Present. How's that for mystic title? Pankaj Mishra writes in this piece, I'm going to quote from now, he wrote that last September at a rock concert-like rally at Houston, Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump walked hand in hand, the two stocky strongmen, looking like brothers in arms. And let me digress a minute. You ever notice how dictators, with the exception, in my experience anyway, with the exception of Hitler and to a lesser degree Stalin, they're all fat? The African dictators, the Asian dictators, the American dictators, such as they have been, European dictators especially, they're all fat. The two stocky strongmen looking like brothers in arms. Certainly, nowhere in the world, Mr. Mishra writes, can Mr. Trump encounter a profounder fraternal spirit than among India's present rulers. India, under them, fulfills, to a startling degree, the American president's fantasy of what the United States should be, which is a country cravenly surrendering its traditions of law and decency before a perpetually inflamed and ham-handed autocrat. How's that from Mr. Mishra? Huh? India, under the leaders, including Modi, and I've got to repeat this because it pretty much sets the tone to the piece that Mr. Mishra is writing. India, under the present rulers, fulfills to a startling degree the American president's fantasy of what the United States should be, which is a country cravenly surrendering its traditions of law and decency before a perpetually inflamed and ham-handed autocrat, Trump Modi. And you can see Trump's total disrespect. No, it's beyond that. I don't know, without getting into scatological language, I don't know what to say. Trump's disrespect, disdain, don't give a fuck about the ideas of law and justice and fair play. Those words mean nothing to Trump. They mean nothing to Modi. They mean nothing to any world-class dictator, which is what Trump is hoping to become. Mr. Trump, Pankaj Mishra writes, has controversially pardoned some white-collar criminals, including Michael Milken, and might extend clemency to Roger Stone. But Trump can only envy the culture of impunity in India. Charges of murder and kidnapping have long pursued Amit Shah, Mr. Modi's closest confidant and India's home minister. But the judge in that case mysteriously died soon after Mr. Modi became prime minister in 2014, and the next judge swiftly acquitted Mr. Shah. Mr. Trump has been forced to bypass Congress to push his measures against immigrants and Muslims, denouncing Muslim immigrants as termites. Mr. Shah has pushed comprehensive laws against Muslim immigrants through the Indian parliament, and with equal chutzpah broken up the only Muslim-majority state in India. Much outrage in America has correctly focused on the Trump administration's cruel separation of children from their parents at detention centers. It has been barely noticed in India that Mr. Modi's government has illegally detained numerous children in the Valley of Kashmir, now in the midst of an endless crackdown. Mr. Trump can expect some pushback from even his regular muse, Fox News. Mr. Modi can rely on uninterrupted sycophancy from almost all of India's major television channels and newspapers. Salman Rushdie calls them Modi toadies. They broadcast uncritically, among other things, the lie that Indian fighter jets bombed and killed major terrorists in Pakistan, whereas Mr. Trump can claim a few fans in Hollywood. Bollywood's stars jostle to fit their extra-wide grins into Mr. Modi's selfies. Bollywood, of course, being the film center of India. And they turn out probably 100 times as many films, I guess all of them musicals, as are turned out from the film industry in the United States, or representationally, Hollywood. But according to Mr. Mishra, Hollywood or Bollywood stars are just more sycophants of this dictator, Modi, which is kind of like the German film stars, with a couple of notable exceptions, during the rise of Hitler. India today, with its groveling political and cultural elite, is Mr. Trump's deepest fantasy flawlessly realized. A democracy once identified with great names such as Mohandas Gandhi has degenerated into Trumpland, an inferno of systemic brutishness, imbecility, and mendacity. Woo! This is an Indian national writing about India under Narendra Modi, much as a lot of American writers write about Trump. The difference being that Trump is still an apprentice dictator. Modi is full-fledged. Modi, like other world-class dictators, is in a position that he can order, through his orders, I should say, tens of thousands of people can be butchered, men, women, and children, just slaughtered in the fucking streets. And in India, for the most part, those are Muslims, except when enough Muslims finally have had enough and they explode and butcher Hindus. But the religious slaughter in India between Hindu and Muslim, or Muslim and Sikh, the religious slaughter is just, it's something that is totally unknown or unable to be known in the American consciousness. We cannot conceive of Protestants and Catholics butchering each other on the streets of Chicago, and then business going on as usual when the corpses are moved and the blood washed away. We can't conceive of that. But that's India under Modi. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. You have your choice. You can listen to The Ranting with the audio podcast, or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.